The hangar of the Jedi Temple smelt of burnt ferrocarbon and betrayal. Anakin Skywalker drove the hilt of his lightsaber into Barriss Offee's shoulder and watched her slam against a stack of cargo crates. Her Moralian features were bruised. Her eyes that only hours ago had burned yellow with Sith corruption beneath the hood she had worn to frame her friend, now streamed with bitter tears. "You set her up," Anakin said, voice low and dangerous. "I did what a true Jedi would do," Barriss spat. "The Order is wrong. We are at war, and we have become the war." He didn't argue. He dragged her to the council chamber himself, past stunned temple guards and the grim face of Obi-Wan Kenobi, who had helped trace the bomber's flight patterns through the Coruscant Undercity. Together, they placed Barriss Offee before the Jedi High Council, and together, they demanded the verdict be rewritten. Mace Windu's jaw tightened as the truth unspooled. He had voted to expel a teenage Padawan. He had cast her out of the Order before the Senate trial had even concluded. And now, the real traitor lay broken at their feet. When Ahsoka Tano was summoned back to the temple, she walked through the great doors with the same steady stride she had carried out of them. Taller, somehow. Harder. Windu spoke for the council. "The Order failed you, Padawan Tano. On behalf of this body, I offer our most sincere apology. Your rank is restored. Your trials, when you are ready, will be the next step." Ahsoka studied his face. The words were correct. The voice was correct. But she felt nothing behind them. Only politics. Only the careful calibration of an institution preserving itself. She bowed. "Thank you, Master Windu." And she stayed. But the Padawan who walked back into the light of the temple was not the same one who had left. In the weeks that followed, Anakin Skywalker felt his apprentice like a distant star. She still sparred with him. She still ran missions with the 501st. She still called Rex captain and grinned when Jesse cracked wise in the mess hall. But the warmth, that reckless open thing she had carried since she was a youngling, had cooled into something tempered and watchful. On the Resolute, high above the outer rim, Obi-Wan Kenobi watched her meditate alone on the observation deck. She no longer closed her eyes. "She sees clearly now," Obi-Wan said to Anakin, when his former Padawan joined him at the viewport. "Perhaps more clearly than we do." "She's angry," Anakin replied. "She's aware. That is a rarer thing." Anakin didn't answer. The truth was, Ahsoka's presence should have steadied him. Instead, it forced him to see the Order as she now saw it. Compromised, distracted, chained to a war it had never been meant to fight. He could feel her questions pressing against his own suppressed doubts, and those doubts were dangerous. They fed a darker voice that had for years whispered to him from a red-draped office in the Senate district. In the training cells, Ahsoka began teaching the younger initiates differently. She did not say the code was wrong. She simply asked them what it meant. She asked them why. She asked Sin Dralig's students to consider whether attachment and compassion were truly the same sin. Word reached Yoda. Word reached Windu. The ancient Grandmaster said nothing. Windu said plenty. Private, to Ki Adi Mundi in Plo Koon. "She pulls at the threads," he warned. "A Padawan should not pull at the threads." Plo Koon, who had once carried a small Togruta child out of the winds of Shili, only folded his arms beneath his robes. "Little Soka," he said quietly, "was never only a Padawan." Enjoying our alternative Star Wars universe? Consider liking and hitting the hype button to show us your support. Don't forget to subscribe for more mind-bending tales from the Star Wars universe. The war hit a second war beneath itself. Ahsoka had begun to feel it in the margins of her missions. Contractors profiting from Republic desperation. Senators voting against their own homeworlds. Shipments of clones and material moving through channels no Jedi had been briefed on. She took her questions carefully to Senator Padmé Amidala. They met in the senator's apartment on 500 Republica, the vast curve of Coruscant skyline glittering behind them. Ahsoka had always respected Padmé. Now, across a low table of Nabooan porcelain, she found a kindred mind. Padmé had her own ledger, shell companies, banking clan discrepancies, legislation authorized by aides who did not exist. "Someone is tightening the noose," Padmé said softly, "piece by piece, and every new emergency power passed by the Senate is a knot in the rope." Ahsoka's montrals flickered with cold sensation. "The Jedi don't see it. The Jedi can't," Padmé answered. "They're in the rope." It was in that apartment, over evenings of tea and quiet treason, that Ahsoka began to understand what her master could not yet admit. The Republic was not merely failing. It was being killed, slowly, deliberately, by a hand that wore the face of a friend. She did not yet know whose hand, but she began to look. Padmé's fingers, at one point, brushed the small curve beneath her robes, a gesture Ahsoka saw and pretended not to see. She said nothing. Some secrets were not hers to name. Yet in that unspoken moment, the 3 points of the emotional triangle that would define the coming months, Padmé, Anakin, Ahsoka, quietly locked into place. Each of them loved him. Each of them feared for him. None of them yet knew how to save him. Darth Sidious had planned for every Jedi. He had not, however, planned for this one. In his original calculus, Ahsoka Tano's expulsion was a precision cut, a surgical strike that severed Anakin's last stabilizing tether. Now, the tether remained. Worse, it was asking questions. And so, in a chamber of red velvet and long shadows, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine smiled his grandfatherly smile and invited the young Jedi commander to tea. "I hear remarkable things about you, my dear," he said, pouring with a steady, liver-spotted hand. "Master Skywalker speaks of you with great pride, and I confess I have found few Jedi willing to engage with me, as he has. Perhaps you might be another." Ahsoka smiled politely and accepted the cup. She did not drink. He spoke of reform, of a republic bloated by bureaucracy, of a Jedi Order shackled by tradition. He spoke delicately of the costs imposed on good people by the rigidity of good institutions. Every word was tuned to the frequency of her recent grievances, and Ahsoka, who had only months earlier stood in a prison cell stripped of her rank, felt the pull. She felt how easy it would be to nod, to agree, to be seen. Instead, she said, "My master admires you greatly, Chancellor." "As I admire him." "Then perhaps," she said, rising, "we both have a responsibility not to use him." The silence that followed was very small and very cold. Palpatine's eyes did not change. His smile did not falter. But in the silence of the Force, something old and coiled turned its attention fully upon her for the first time. He had planned for every Jedi. He would, he decided, now plan for this one. The siege of Mandalore began as it had always been destined to begin, with Bo-Katan Kryze's ultimatum and the Republic's answer in blue armored steel. But this time, Ahsoka Tano did not stand on Mandalore as a civilian advisor. She stood as Jedi Commander, 2 lightsabers at her hips, Captain Rex and the 501st Finest at her back. Her armor bore the Republic crest, not a painted circle of independence, and Sundari's pale moonlight caught the emblem as her shock troopers deployed. The capital fell in smoke and siren. Shadow Collective super commandos fought street by street against clones in white and blue. And in the cavernous industrial undercity, beneath the ruined dome, Ahsoka found Maul. The former Sith Lord laughed when he saw her. He laughed harder when he saw the Jedi crest on her pauldron. "Still theirs," he hissed. "Still behind." They dueled through throne rooms and shattered walkways, saber against spinning saber, the Dathomirian faster and more cunning than she remembered. And when at last she pinned him beneath her crossed blades, he did not beg, he smiled. "Skywalker is the key," Maul rasped. "He has always been the key, but not in the way you think, child. The Sith did not discover him. The Sith made him. My old master's master set the board before you were spawned, and your precious chosen one walks the pattern even now." She almost killed him then. She did not. She ordered Rex to seal him in a containment module and transport him in chains to Coruscant to stand before the Council. But the words Maul had spoken traveled with her, across hyperspace, across the stars, faster than any shuttle. By the time Coruscant's spires filled her viewport again, she knew. Her master was the prize. The hand reaching for him was already closing. She stood before the Jedi High Council in full armor, still dust-streaked from Mandalore, and she told them everything. Maul's claim, the pattern, the sense, felt in the Force like a weight settling over Coruscant itself, that the enemy they had hunted for a decade was not outside the city, but inside it. Mace Windu folded his hands. A Sith Lord's weapons are poison, Padawan Tano. Maul hated Sidious more than he hated us. He would say anything to turn our eyes towards shadows and away from the war. Master Windu, I'm not naming shadows. I am asking you to look. We are looking, Ki Adimundi said gently, as we have always looked. Then look harder. Yoda's eyes closed. Plo Koon's hood did not move. Obi-Wan Kenobi, weary beyond his years, studied her with troubled affection and said nothing at all. They dismissed her with thanks. They did not act. She found Anakin in the room of 1,000 fountains, pacing like a caged thing. He had been told, not by her, but by Master Windu, stripped of nuance, that his former Padawan had brought wild accusations before the council, that she was overreaching, that perhaps the trauma of the bombing had never fully left her. Is that what they said? Ahsoka asked, her voice soft. Anakin's jaw worked. They said a lot of things. Do you believe them? For a long moment, Anakin Skywalker looked at his apprentice, at the young woman the Order had twice now failed to hear, and something in him broke in a way he did not yet have the language for. No, he said finally. I don't. And in that moment, the two of them together became a fracture inside the Jedi Order that Darth Sidious had not planned for. But Sidious, as ever, adapted. That night, in Padmé's apartment, with Ahsoka a silent, deliberate presence, Anakin Skywalker finally spoke the words he had carried for months like a weapon turned inward. I've been dreaming of her dying, he said, not looking at either of them. In childbirth, screaming my name, and I can't let it happen. Not again. Not after my mother. Padmé reached for his hand. Ahsoka did not move. Master, she said quietly, the Force doesn't show you a future so you can chain yourself to it. It shows you so you can understand. Fear makes prophecies true. Trust makes them bearable. That's Jedi talk. It's love talk. Real love. The kind the Council is too frightened to name. He looked up sharply. Whatever he had expected her to say, it had not been that. You knew, he breathed. I've always known. Her eyes went to Padmé, then back. You're my master, Sky Guy. I see you. For the first time in a long time, Anakin Skywalker wept without shame. And in that small, impossible room, with a pregnant senator, a Padawan who had refused to leave him, and a Jedi Knight who had spent his life being told his love was a flaw, something like hope flickered. He agreed to take it to Obi-Wan, to bring the truth into the light, to trust the Force and his family instead of a voice in a red-draped office. It was the closest Anakin Skywalker would ever come to turning back. Across the city, in his highest tower, Darth Sidious felt the shift in the Force like a sudden change in pressure. He moved his next piece at once. The Chancellor appointed Anakin Skywalker to the Jedi High Council as his personal representative. The Council, furious and powerless, seated him and refused him the rank of Master. The humiliation landed exactly as Sidious intended. But this time, Anakin did not swallow the insult alone. This time, he walked out of that chamber and found Ahsoka waiting in the corridor, arms folded, jaw set. She did not soothe him. She simply said, "We keep looking, together." And together, they began to hunt. While Anakin was sent to spy on Palpatine, a command that sickened him, Ahsoka followed a different thread. She traced the shell companies Padmé had mapped. She cross-referenced banking clan transfers with Maul's half-remembered mutterings about the Plagueis line. She spent 3 sleepless nights in the archive stacks of the temple, walking a path no Jedi shadow had dared yet to walk. And then, she went to Maul. Deep in the lowest detention level of the Republic judiciary, The Dathomirian sat in his manacles and laughed when she told him what she suspected. He gave her the name like a gift, because Maul, alone of all living beings outside the Sith bond, hated Palpatine enough to confess everything. Sidious was Palpatine. Palpatine was Sidious. He named the Sith by both names, in a voice that was no longer mocking, and the holorecorder caught every syllable. What she walked out of that detention level with was not just intelligence, it was proof. Ahsoka sat in the cold blue light of the archive terminal and understood, with terrible completeness, what Maul had tried to tell her in the ruins of Sundari. Palpatine was Sidious, and Palpatine had her master pressed against a precipice with the life of his wife as the counterweight. She ran for Anakin before she ran for the Council. She had to tell him first. She had to reach him before Sidious did. She was already too late. She found Anakin in his quarters, pale and shaking, the imprint of Palpatine's confession still on him. He had learned that very hour that the Chancellor was a Sith Lord, and that only a Sith Lord, the Chancellor had whispered, could save Padmé from the death Anakin had foreseen. Ahsoka grabbed him by the shoulders. "Master, listen to me. He is not offering you a cure. He is offering you a cage. I have proof." She played him Maul's confession. For a long, terrible moment, Anakin Skywalker stood at the true fulcrum of his life. Obi-Wan on one side, Ahsoka on the other, Padmé between them all, unborn child and unbroken future. He almost chose them. Mace Windu burst into the corridor, warned separately by Anakin's earlier half-honest confession, flanked by Agen Kolar, Saesee Tiin, and Kit Fisto. Ahsoka joined them. So did Anakin, haltingly a step behind. In the Chancellor's office, Sidious moved faster than any of them. Kolar fell. Tiin fell. Fisto fell. Windu alone drove the Sith Lord to his knees before the great window of the Senate District. Lightning crackled. Flesh melted. And Anakin Skywalker, standing in the doorway with his apprentice beside him, heard Palpatine scream that he was dying. Heard him promise, once more, Padmé's life in exchange for Windu's. Ahsoka's hand closed on his arm. "Master, don't! Please! This is the moment!" He hesitated, longer than he ever had in any other telling of this story. A full, agonizing heartbeat. Then, he saw Padmé's face. His mother's face. The dream. "I'm sorry, Snips," he whispered. And he cut Mace Windu's hand away. Windu fell. The lightning took him. Anakin Skywalker knelt before the Emperor, and Ahsoka Tano, backing away with tears on her white markings, watched her master die in real time. She did not run. She hid, deep in the underlevels of the temple, with a handful of initiates pressed against her side. Ahsoka Tano listened to her comm crackle with the voice of Captain Rex, a voice fighting itself, begging her to pin him down, to pry the inhibitor chip from his skull before it finished the work it had already half done. She saved Rex. She could not save the temple. From a high walkway, she watched the 501st march up the great processional steps in perfect formation. She watched the doors open for them. She watched the Jedi who opened those doors fall before they understood. And at the head of that column, hooded in black, walked her master. She knew him by his gait, by the storm of the Force twisting around him, by the grief that still lived impossibly beneath the rage. He was not yet the armored figure history would remember. He was still Anakin. That was the worst part. She met him one final time, in the smoke and ruin of the council chamber. Younglings dead at his feet. He saw her. The yellow eyes flinched. "Snips," he said, and the word was broken. "No." She ignited both blades. "He's gone. My master is gone. You're just what's left." They did not duel for long. She was not there to win. She was there to look him in the face, truly look, and let him look back. She wanted him to carry her face with him into the dark. She wanted him to know that she had stayed, that she had fought, that she had been there at the end, and still, he had chosen this. When she finally fled into the Coruscant night, leaping from spire to spire as the temple burned behind her, She was not running from the Jedi Order. She had already walked away from that months ago in her heart. She was walking away from Anakin Skywalker. And this time, she understood him completely. The galaxy she stepped into was an empire. Somewhere, a rebellion was already being born in the grief of senators and the fury of exiles. Somewhere, a child would be hidden on Tatooine and another on Alderaan. Somewhere, a Jedi named Obi-Wan Kenobi was riding into the Junlan wastes with a broken heart and an impossible promise. And somewhere in the black, Ahsoka Tano, who had stayed, who had seen everything, who had failed to save the man she loved most, set her jaw, ignited a white blade she had not yet forged, and kept walking. She had tried to save him from inside. The tragedy is that no one could have. If you enjoyed this journey into an alternative Star Wars universe where destiny takes unexpected turns and balance means something entirely different, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We explore the infinite possibilities hidden within the galaxy far, far away, asking the questions that reshape everything you thought you knew. The Force has many paths. Come discover them with us.